What's up my friends, welcome back to the channel, and on today's video we are talking about the TOPO Athletic MAGNIFLY 5. If you're looking for a daily trainer that feels refreshing on your feet, stick around. Alright guys, let's get this video started off with some disclosures. TOPO Athletic was good enough to send me the MAGNIFLY 5 for the purpose of review. However, they haven't told me what to say, they don't have any editorial privileges, and all the thoughts and opinions are my own. With that said, the TOPO Athletic MAGNIFLY 5 will cost you only $135. So let's talk about the shoe itself. The TOPO MAGNIFLY 5 is a daily trainer. It's that type of shoe where you're going to put it on and you're going to go out and you're going to log most of your miles. You won't be grabbing this shoe for your speed work. It's certainly not a race day shoe, but your bread and butter miles. Now the MAGNIFLY 5 has 25 in the heel, 25 in the forefoot for a 0mm drop. This is a zero drop shoe. So if you haven't run in a zero drop shoe before, I just want to encourage you to exercise a little caution. And by that I mean, if you are running in a 10mm drop shoe, don't just get your first zero drop shoe and go out and run 20 miles. It's probably best that you let your body adapt to it. But after you do adapt to it, running some of your runs of the week in a zero drop shoe is going to feel very refreshing. Now remember that stack height, 25 and 25, that's not over the top. This is a medium cushion shoe. And we'll talk more about the ride after we talk about the rest of the shoe and the design. But that's another reason why I found the MAGNIFLY 5 to be such a breath of fresh air, because it's different than most every other shoe that I have. Okay, let's talk about some weight. Now this is clearly a pretty minimal shoe, and that weight reflects it. Topo claims that in a US men's size 9, it will tip the scale at 8.7 ounces or 246 grams. However, in my size, a US men's size 13, it tips the scale at 10.2 ounces or 290 grams. I am always happy to see a sub 300 gram shoe in my size. Let's move on to how this shoe is made. I'm going to hold this up. Look, we've got a good amount of padding around this heel collar. It's certainly not over the top, but it is definitely adequate. The shoe is very comfortable to step into. Of course, that is also likely to this removable Ortholite insert, but as far as comfort around my heel, around the heel collar, it's spot on. Now the heel counter is very rigid. I did get an excellent lockdown around my heel. We can see that it is quite flexible around the top, so that heel counter doesn't extend all the way up, but the rigid part of the heel counter is exactly where we want it, towards the bottom, right where it grips your heel. Now the upper is something that Topo has changed for this version of the MAGNIFLY, and we have a nice engineered mesh upper. It is very breathable. We've got holes all the way along across the toe box around each of the sides. And before I sat down to film this review, I did go out and I did run 10 miles, and it was 71 degrees and very humid. So even though I am training and testing in the winter time, I did get a good run in some fairly warm temperatures, and my feet didn't feel overheated at all. In fact, the shoe really just disappeared on my foot, but more on that in a second. As far as the reinforcements go, it's a fairly simple setup, right? We can see the logo right there. That's not giving really any support, but we've got some underlays coming around the toe box just to keep that off your toes. Reinforcement along each side of the eyelet chain, and then we do have this kind of like heel clip right on the back, and really it's just a foam piece, and as I touch it I'm really not sure if it does anything structurally speaking or if it's just aesthetic. I think it's just aesthetic because the heel counter is internal. The tongue on the MAGNIFLY 5 is like medium in cushion, and of course if you've been watching any of my videos over the past couple of years, you know that there are basically three types of tongue. There are thin race day tongues, there are super plush thick tongues, which I'm really not a fan of, and then there are medium thickness tongues, and I don't know why that some companies just want to overdo it with the thickness of the tongues, but I like what Topo has done with the MAGNIFLY 5. It's just the right amount of cushioning. Now the tongue is not gusseted, but we do have the two lace loops right on the top of the tongue, and in all my testing I didn't have any tongue migration. The tongue stayed right in place when I locked down the shoe. Now speaking of locking down the shoe and the fit and the feel, the MAGNIFLY 5 does fit true to size, but the fit is what I really like about this shoe. So if I hold this up, you can see that we do have quite a wide toe box, and this really allows my toes to splay out. It's a very pleasant feeling having a toe box of this shape. It just really adds to the comfort when you put the shoe on and when you're running for a while. But what I really like was the heel and the midfoot, how narrow they were. Now, I don't want to say that it's narrow because I don't want to scare away people that may not have narrow feet like me, but the fit was just spot on, and I didn't notice any slip. I really got a good lockdown through my heel and midfoot, and then where it opened up in the toe box just made it feel very comfortable. Oh, before we move on to the midsole, the upper is using recycled materials. I don't know how much recycled materials it uses. I know on Topo's page for the MAGNIFLY 4, it said it used the equivalent of 3 12-ounce plastic bottles, but I didn't find that same advertisement for the MAGNIFLY 5, although generally speaking, companies don't go back on their environmental consciousness. We tend to move forward, so we know that the upper on the MAGNIFLY 5 does use recycled materials. I just can't tell you how much. Okay, coming down to the midsole. Now this is Topo's Zip Foam. Now Zip Foam is a proprietary foam, and Topo claims that it is springier than EVA, and this year it is softer, lighter, and more responsive than in version 4 of the Magnifly. Moving down to the outsole, we can see we have some good rubber coverage right up on the forefoot. We've got rubber where it counts on my lateral heel edge. The shoe is very flexible. We got some flex grooves obviously right there in the outsole, some exposed midsole with kind of like midsole lugs here in the middle, and I'm sure those are going to wear down quicker than the rubber. But looking at the rubber on my lateral heel, it's a pretty stiff compound, and I'm really not surprised at that, and I'll tell you why in just a second. But the wear is absolutely minimal. I am seeing just a tiny bit of wear on the exposed midsole here, but the outsole rubber is standing up like a champ. Again, I'm seeing a little bit of wear on this exposed midsole right here, but that's totally to be expected. That really doesn't speak to the longevity of the shoe. It's the rubber that we want to keep an eye on. But let's talk about the ride for a second, because this shoe is generally not what I would go for, or at least it's not what I say I like. And I should really reevaluate what it is that I say I like, because I often say that I like a really soft, a really spongy type of shoe. And I am repeatedly reminded with all the shoes that I test that that is not the case. And I was reminded again with the Magnifly 5. Now, this zip foam in the Magnifly 5, even though Topo claims that it is softer, lighter, and more responsive than in version 4, I didn't run in version 4, so I couldn't really compare it to that, but I did find it fairly firm. And that's not exactly surprising, considering that we only have a 25mm stack height, but it's definitely on the firmer end of the spectrum. But after I ran in it several times, I started to really realize that I was liking the ride. I am liking the firmer ride. Now, if I'm totally honest, I don't think that I would grab the Magnifly 5 to go out and run a long run, like 17, 18, 19 miles. I think maybe that firmer foam would get tiresome after 3 hours running, but for my day-to-day runs, which is what this shoe is made for, I really enjoyed that firmer ride. We've got a fairly flat profile to the midsole, a little bit of toe spring here at the front, a little bit of heel flare at the back, but really that is a little bit. But because of this flatter geometry and the somewhat stiffer compound of the zip foam, I found that the road feel was pleasantly surprising. And also this flexibility in the shoe made it feel like I was actually going out for a run and I could feel the road beneath my feet, and when I tried to speed up, it felt like I was feeling the effort as I should without the assistance from other shoes. Does that make sense? I actually had the thought that I was becoming a better runner running in the Magnifly 5 because I wasn't having that extra assistance. You know, we always hear about having a rotation of shoes so you work different parts of your feet, different parts of your body. And I think if you haven't run in a firmer zero drop shoe, then the Magnifly 5 is going to be a nice addition to your rotation. And look, I do want to clarify that I'm talking about the zip foam being a firm ride, because it's only a firm ride when you compare it to super soft shoes. It's really not that firm, and it's certainly not something that you'll notice as being firm. Just as a shoe reviewer, when I'm comparing it to other shoes, it is firmer than the average at this space in time. It seems like a lot of companies are going for really soft midsole foams, and maybe that's why I found it so refreshing that the zip foam was just a little bit firmer, and of course the zero drop. I do have several zero drop shoes in my rotation, and I do wear them on a regular basis, so when I get a new zero drop shoe in, I don't have to worry about it having any adverse effects on my body, just because I am somewhat used to it. So as far as the daily training goes, I think this is really going to be something to take a look at, especially if you want that nice, comfortable, wide toe box. It really doesn't get any better than this, and you need something to balance out your other shoes, perhaps with a higher drop or perhaps with a softer midsole compound. I wouldn't say that this shoe is one that you would pick up for a recovery day just because it isn't soft enough. I tend to pick up my really soft shoes when I want to go out and just baby my body, but on those day-to-day regular miles, the Magnifly 5 really hits the spot. In fact, I was out the other day running with my wife and I was wearing these, and we were doing fartlek workouts, and during the actual workout part of that run, I was picking up and I was running just under a 7-minute pace around the 6:50 mark, and it was performing really well. Now, I didn't feel like I was getting any extra assistance from the shoe, but in our training, that's really not what we want. We want a shoe that will protect us and feel good on our feet. It's on race day when we want that little extra assistance, perhaps of a springier foam and a plate. But yeah, for training, the Magnifly 5 is top notch. As I'm sitting here about to wrap up the video, I'm trying to come across with something that I really didn't like, but it's extremely difficult. I also like the understated look. We've got the logo on the lateral side and a very small topo written on the back, but other than that, look at that, there's nothing on it. But anyway, let me know your thoughts. Have you run in the Magnifly before? Have you run in any zero drop shoe before? Drop a comment and let me know. Oh, and also, if you are a fan of zero drop shoes and you integrate them into a rotation with other types of shoe, other drops, I want to know how often each week you reach for the zero drop shoe. And with that, it's Matt B. This has been my review of the Topo Athletic Magnifly 5. Be kind, be happy, run well. I'll see you in a couple of days.